So Worthington's processing tool, he calls it REACH. And here are the steps he has people walk through. And I highly recommend getting the book, Forgiving and Reconciling. First step, recall the hurt. Pretend you're a newspaper reporter and you're writing on it, but at the same time, allow yourself to feel the emotions. One component of that, he says, is relax your body and sense what you're feeling in your body as you walk through the event again. Is there a churning? Is your throat tightening up? Are you tensing up all over the place? Because hurt takes place not only in the head, it takes place all throughout. Secondly, he says, empathize. What generated that in that person? Why did they do that? What was driving them? Someone was bullying you. Odds are pretty high they were bullied themselves. Very high. They learn that tactic by being victims themselves, and they're working out their anger. That doesn't mean you're excusing it, but you're trying to empathize with it. Perhaps you played a role in generating the issues. I want to be careful with this because sometimes people are too ready to blame themselves. I see this especially in the atrocity of rape, of how women can blame themselves, or others will blame you. Dressed too provocatively, or you were flirting. I can't say the word on tape that I'm thinking right now. No. But it doesn't mean you can't empathize, as hard as that is. That's one of the reasons I like Worthington's book, and starting with the issue of the man who killed his mother. How could he empathize? He would love to have had 10 minutes with that man alone. Actually, an adolescent. He would have enjoyed extracting revenge. The person wouldn't have been alive afterwards. But that wouldn't have solved it. That's not what forgiveness calls us to do. Then he talks about the altruistic gift of forgiveness. In other words, you're seeing things you're describing as positively you can what happened to the victim, and you're listening to your body. What this is doing is giving your body chemistry a chance to change in relation to the event. As you recall the hurt, you have one set of body reactions. As you empathize and I choose to forgive, so with that choice says, but I'm offering this, you're not necessarily physically offering it to the person. You're doing it emotionally, you're doing it mentally as an exercise, not physically with the person there, especially if it's a dangerous situation. So what he's talking about is in therapy or in prayer with another person, you offer this gift of forgiveness, and you're getting your body chemistry related to the event to change. And he notes that in studies, the sooner you do this after the event, the more powerful this forgiveness is. You get an early chance to rewire your brain chemistry about it. And he says the more powerful the event was, the more powerful this can be in your life. Then he says commit publicly to forgive. This might include telling a prayer partner, I choose to forgive. Publicly does not mean stand up in front of the church and saying, I choose to forgive. But it means you're going outside of yourself in this, and you're talking to somebody else, whether it's a therapist or a trusted friend or a church leader or a teammate or a roommate, someone you can count on, and perhaps asking them, what do I do with this now? Especially if what the person did was illegal. And there, I'd say, this is still part of the personal frame of reference, but perhaps the job is not completed yet. And the last thing he says, you have to hold on to it. One speaker at a crew conference once said the problem with a living sacrifice is it can climb off the altar. And forgiveness of a living person, when you're in a living relationship with them, is like this. You will be tempted to let go of the forgiveness and not hold on to it. You will be tempted the next time they hurt you in the same way to resurrect all the feelings that were there. He says one of the things that they have found in walking people through this can even rekindle romantic love. if love has been lost through hurt and pain on both sides. Because you're rewiring yourself. You're thinking empathetically about the person. You're offering them forgiveness. You're committing publicly to forgive them, and you're then choosing to hold on to forgiveness. So again, when you're thinking of team relationships, I'm sure all of you watching this are thinking of a particular set of relationships or a particular relationship right now, and perhaps what you can do to do this. I'd recommend getting the book and walking through it, because he does a better job of explaining each of these steps than I have. It's available through Amazon. It's worth buying, it's worth reading through, it's worth working your way through. I'm working my way through the book slowly right now, but this is this larger step. I've gone through step number 2 and I'm in the process about to go through step number 3. So again, it doesn't involve asking God for help or waiting till the offender apologizes, but it's agreeing to live with the consequences of the other's sin. So the last thing I want to touch on are cross-cultural principles in conflict, and these are extracted from Duane Elmer's book, Cross-Cultural Conflict. He notes this: the degree to which shame, face, and honor are core cultural values, that's the degree to which it may be important to choose an indirect method of conflict resolution, a mediatorial method. If the other person has extensive exposure to Western culture, sensitive directness may be acceptable, understood, and not offensive. If they don't, what is their cultural frame of reference for forgiveness? All forms of confrontation should occur in private if possible, so as to minimize any loss of face. Sometimes people have a rule of thumb: the more public the offense, the more public the confrontation might need to be. Elmer says be careful with that. Be very careful with that. Because public discourse, the person confronting you may have even lost face already by how they confronted you, even though they thought they were upholding the right. Familiarize yourself with the stories, the parables, fables, legends, and heroes of the culture in order to appropriately interpret their use in conflict situations. When you really know a culture, you'll use a proverb naturally in a situation to defuse something. But it's something we don't do in our culture. And so it's a skill we don't have, but a skill we need to recover. Understand the various indirect methods used in your host culture. Be alert to which ones are used and under what circumstances. You won't find books on this in your culture. It comes through observation, it comes through listening, it comes through asking questions, it comes through having trusted insiders to help you think things through. And that's where the next one, trusted insiders, a close relationship with a host culture person who will be able to help you interpret confusing situations. Here's what happened. Can you help me understand? Realize you might get to the end of the why questions pretty quick. Why is that wrong? It just is. Be willing to accept that. You don't have to, you can embarrass them by asking questions that they can't answer. And that's, again, best done perhaps in a more private setting. If you were the one who offended someone, asking someone that in public might be a helpful thing to do, because they see you're trying to learn how to overcome that. Ask God for help in understanding and applying unfamiliar conflict resolution strategies. Mediators, beating around the bush, writing a letter, telling someone, anticipating they will tell the other person. In collective societies, there are very few secrets. People know everything there is to know, and that's part of how they understand each other. So if you tell one person that's a member of the in-group of someone you're having a conflict with, you can bet it's going to make its way to that person reasonably quickly. And Scripture is the final judge on all cultural forms. Prayer and discussion may be required before some cultural expressions are embraced. Understanding them, know what they mean, know from an insider what this means, especially if you have questions as to whether it fits in Scripture. But be very careful not just to use your own lens in determining what fits in Scripture. Okay, that wraps it up for us. I'm hoping this has given you a lot of grist to wrestle with in ways that will help you know how to better handle conflict.